And to that piece of lieutenant that's always on his podcast, bash us, fuck him.
Good morning, everybody. 8:05 live Eastern Time, and of course 5:05 Pacific Coast. Good morning, everybody, coast to coast. I got the good Sal Greco with me, good friend of mine, my brother Sal Greco. Filled in today. John McCarry had to put it 28 for today, so here we go. Let's get right into some pressing stuff. But before we do that, before we get into the news, let's talk about the Super Bowl. Now, I had my money on the Chiefs. Sal said the Eagles. It was a bloodbath. Sal, what are your thoughts on the game? Be honest. I know you picked the Eagles. I was hoping for a three-peat, but, I never want to bet against Mahomes. But that game was a bloodbath. What are your thoughts?
The anti-Trump Chiefs. Look, if you watch now, let's throw all of the politics aside. If you've watched the whole season in the NFL, there have been numerous instances where the Chiefs were helped by referees. There's a lot of conspiracy against the referee. It just so happens that a lot of the calls always go their way. I see the same pattern also in soccer. In soccer, if you watch like Italian Serie A, they'll do the same with Juventus or Milan. It's always the referee throws the yellow card, red card, penalties, but it's always in favor of one person or one team. And I always felt like behind the scenes, the only way to rig anything would be through a referee. They don't call a foul. They call a foul, doesn't exist. They balls and strikes as an umpire. So if you're going to rig anything, that's the way to do it. Obviously, Travis Kelce, who is, let's say, a mandate pusher, that's the star of that team, the mandate pusher, and his beloved girlfriend that is now got booed out of the building last night. And if you look at the game also, they showed everyone in the stands in 5 seconds of the president, who got the loudest cheer, and the biggest boos was the beloved girlfriend of the shot pusher himself. So the game itself, we'll say, the Chiefs had no business being on that field. You could almost see that they were pushed the whole year and got destroyed by the better team. And the Eagles were better. Congratulations to Nick Sirianni, a fellow Italian-American paisano. Even shout out from the Italian-American Civil Rights League for winning the Super Bowl. Of course, the antics that happened in the street in Philadelphia afterwards, I don't know why everyone has to be rowdy. It could have been a great celebration, but apparently they were fighting with cops, and that was a disgraceful scene in Philly. The game itself, congratulations. The Eagles completely outclassed the Chiefs. They didn't belong on the same field. I think karma, as they say, is a bitch, and it came back around and bit the Chiefs in the butt, who were, in my opinion, put there by the league because they had a mandate pusher, and they're not to say the quarterback, he's a nice guy, but the team itself is, let's say, not the greatest fans of the president. And the president is in the stands, and they show him for 5 seconds. They show everyone else. And we could get into the halftime show, which was probably the worst I've ever seen in my life, but I'm sure you have a lot to say about that.
So I'm glad you mentioned that, right? So good morning, friends and listeners. The chat is already heating up. Tom Joyce, get that pot of coffee ready in the squad. Amazing ass, good morning. Ron Layson, of course, Rob Lukash, friends, family to the podcast. I thought the game was a pretty amazing game. Why? Because, listen, the bottom line is don't ever bet against the Chiefs, especially Mahomes. You know what? We're thinking we might have another three-peat. There's only been a couple of three-peats in NFL history. But once the halftime show came, I got to be honest, I thought the halftime show was pretty good, but I saw a lot of virtual signaling. I was out at Buffalo Wild Wings with my family, with my wife and kids who were watching the game. And it got pretty wild in Buffalo Wild Wings. There was a lot of young kids there. They were having a good time. Kendrick Lamar, I thought he put on a hell of a show. But then I saw the virtual signaling come, right? You see the girls doing the flag football, and you see the girl running through the field, and it's all men on the field. And then it flips over, and now she's playing all women. So that part is pretty cool. Think, the idea is we're bringing it back where women should be competing with other women. So there was a lot of virtual signaling, and the virtual signaling was actually the right direction. So this is a podcast where we give perspective. We talk about politics. We talk about how politics interjects everything, even the NFL, even a football game. So I thought that part was quite interesting. It was actually, listen, he put on a hell of a performance. I mean, the kids were going nuts at Buffalo Wild Wings. I actually had fun. My wife was dancing. It was pretty cool. But the virtual signaling at the halftime show was it was quite what I expected, but at least went in the right direction. So America's back. So Sal, I want your thoughts. If you can, what do you think about the virtual signaling on that? And what was your favorite commercial? There's a couple of good commercials for the Super Bowl. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm a big fan of Mission Impossible. I saw that commercial. I know that movie's about to come out. And I always liked Tom Cruise as an actor. I know people say Scientology or whatever, but I think he's a good actor. There was other commercials I saw, but the halftime show, I've got to say, I remember Michael Jackson, which is my all-time favorite musician, at least, individually, not like a band. And to go from something like that to that last night, and this has been a couple of them in a row. Bruno Mars was good. I don't know what kind of virtue signaling that was last night, but the theme I have in my head now is "They're Not Like Us." I don't know what that means, but that song I now attribute to the losing team of the Kansas City Chiefs. So I hope that their next performance they have at halftime is something that's not virtue. Please stop with the virtue signaling, please.
Crow Eater says right here, how many woke commercials were there? Spot on. There were plenty of woke commercials. They were good, but they were woke. It was interesting. Listen, I got to be honest. I thought Kendrick Lamar put on a good show. I got to be honest. I don't know his songs, but I was kind of bebopping to him. Like, all right, this is pretty cool. But the part with the girls on the flag football, I'm like, all right, here we go. Here's the virtual signaling.
Eric, there was something that happened too that the cameras didn't pick it up, but I saw it on X. Was somebody jumped up there with a Palestinian flag and they got tackled, and it took a while to catch them. So that was an incident that occurred that wasn't caught on the Fox camera, but it was happening. I don't even know how they got on the stage, to be honest. But there was that debacle as well. There's always some rowdy guy that shows up on the field or something.
G Wall 77 puts that was a woke halftime. Like I said, a lot of virtual signaling. So, but again, I got to give it out to Sal. Sal had his money on Philadelphia Eagles. I was totally behind the Chiefs. But again, who really cares? New York wasn't in it. Shout out to John McCarry. John McCarry couldn't make it today. John actually got a comment here. What did John say here? Kendrick Lamar was the worst halftime show in Super Bowl history. So I got to give him that. If you compare, John's right. If you compare this Super Bowl to other halftime shows, it wasn't the great. Like I said, I was kind of bebopping to it. It was a decent show, but for a Super Bowl, yeah, I would have put my money on this one. So enough with that. Let's segue into today's news. You know what's interesting about today's news? So I've been getting calls constantly. Always get calls. What are you and John going to do when you run out of content? What are you and Sal going to do when you run out of content?
Yeah.
Content. We have so much content, we don't even know what to do with it. That's where we're at right now. So let's talk about the NYPD beauty pageant. Are you surprised by this? So sure enough, Stevenson at the upper echelon of the police department, one of Madry's monsters, he's at the forefront of this right now. So apparently in the NYPD, there was a Christmas party in December of 2023 where Stevenson was holding a beauty contest for the best dressed female at this Christmas party. Now, I've been to Christmas parties before, Sal, especially with the police department. We've had Lieutenant of the Year. We had Supervisor of the Year, maybe Cop of the Year. I mean, fraternal organizations, they have Man of the Year. What do you think about best dressed? What are your thoughts when that comes to mind? Best dressed female at a Christmas party. What are your immediate thoughts?
And an NYPD party, I don't know what business that. I don't know how that gets by officially through. You're having an NYPD party, and that would have to go through, integrity control officers, EEO, legal. And the question is, how does it get by all of that? Just like we've, stated in the past when we were talking about a shuttered establishment in the Bronx, that how do you get past all these, entities you have to get through to get to a party and have something like that? In this instance, they're saying that the EEO approved this, but legal has no idea. So right there, you have a contradiction of itself. And I actually cover this on my show later on with Serena Townsend. We discussed this whole part where how do you get EEO to say this is okay when technically it's sexual harassment from the start. But again, look at the characters that are involved. You got Raul Stevenson there, who's a buddy of Phil Banks. And by the way, just so people don't know, especially some low information people that want to call me a buffoon in the comments, Jeffrey Madry and John Schell were at this very party. I don't know why they're not named as defendants, but that is a fact. And you could actually look that up. And apparently, Jeffrey Madry was a judge at this party. So a judge for this $700 reward. So I don't know what why the theme of these individuals, the crumbs, crew, whatever you want to call them, they always do the same things in the same places, no matter where it goes. This is disgraceful, and I don't know how this got past EEO or the legal bureau, really, because this should have never even happened. You want to have a party, it's different than having a contest like this. This is sexual harassment.
I gotta laugh because we used to always say in the NYPD, the more that you get promoted, the better looking that you get, right? And I tell you what, these guys are at the point where they think they're all Don Juan. The upper echelon of the police department thinks they're the best looking thing walking. I mean, this is honestly, when you read the title, NYPD chief offered $700 to best dressed female underling that retaliated against cop who refused to participate suit. You gotta laugh. I mean, it sounds like some dirty old men that, hey, you know what? We got the power. We're the bosses. Let's hold a best dressed. And let's be honest. What do we mean by best dressed female? We're not asking them to come in suits, right? We're asking them to come in some scandalous outfits so you guys can get your rocks off at a party and use your power and influence to have the ability to do that. These guys are, honestly, they're a joke. They're a bunch of clowns. It's absolutely ridiculous. And even if they didn't have any ill intentions to gawk over these women, it's just plain stupid at this point. I mean, this upper echelon, this administration, we're talking about December 2023, already the appearance of impropriety had already been seeped out to the public about this upper echelon. We didn't have all the, the underlining, silver lining information about Jeffrey Madry. But I've said a long time ago, Jeffrey Madry is the wolf in sheep's clothing. He's the one that created all these monsters. And I heard the same thing. I heard that it was Madry that was present at this party actually judging it. Tom makes a great comment here. That's just how you know these guys are just plain stupid. He says where they went, I got to laugh at this comment. Where they went wrong was not having the sharpest dressing man too. If they had both, it wouldn't have been bad. Well, it wouldn't have been as bad, right? At least at this point, you kind of justify and say, hey, we had a best dressed, contest for both genders. I mean, I don't know. What's next? We're going to have Two-Spirit. Best dress for Two Spirits. And Deuces 300 says, did the winner get first grade with 0 collars? That's a great question. So I think it's quite interesting, right? So in this article, it indicates how this particular female lieutenant was eventually targeted because she didn't want to partake in the festivities of this particular contest. And it says that it got to the point that when Stevenson would hold meetings with the NYPD and this lieutenant was present, that she was berated, embarrassed, and humiliated at these meetings because she refused to partake in this best dressed NYPD beauty pageant contest. What are your thoughts on that? Do you believe her? Do you not believe her? Do you think there's any teeth to this? Because in the article, it goes further to say, right? I think this is part of the article. It's kind of like smear her a little bit and defame her, that she has a prior lawsuit where she sued a fellow cop that was a boyfriend of hers, where a relationship went bad. So what are your thoughts on this immediately? Before we go into that, amazing Ant, shout out to you, $9.99 coffee and donuts. Here we go. Good morning, truth tellers, Eric and Sal. The Auto Pound does the best dressed female at their annual Christmas party. A member of the service went 1 year, refused to go back, launched to midnights. So apparently this is, I never even heard of this in the NYPD. Thank you, amazing Ant. I had no idea. I've never been to a Christmas party where they did this. I do know, Sal, and you know this, that in many commands, and depending on what your position is in that command, there is pressure put upon you to attend these Christmas parties. But what are your thoughts on this female best dressed?
It's a horrible idea from the get-go. And I do think that she was harassed at the meetings because actually in her own allegations, I believe she mentions a supervisor that another supervisor told her something about, the meetings and what Stevenson was snickering, because I believe that where she was at the precinct, that's the Brooklyn North headquarters as well, which is why you would even have any of these interactions. So, it's like sexual harassment seems to be like a theme of the Eric Adams administration. It seems to be a problem everywhere you go. Most of these people that are in the circle of the Eric Adams cronies have an issue. So when you look at all the lawsuits that are being laid out, sexual harassment, it kind of same theme, same pattern, and then there's the retaliation on top of it because you're not giving in or you're not going along with the program. So and you see it where now it's in this command in Manhattan North. We know it's in the Bronx. You know about it in One Police Plaza. You hear about it also in other offices, this shady office they had with Tim Pearson in it. So it's a pattern. It's all over the place. It's very disturbing. And it's a reflection of the mayor himself, who somehow is entrenched in the middle of everything. And this should have never happened. And I know how it is because we were all there. You get pressured to go to these stupid Christmas parties where I don't know why you would. I don't see why you have to attend some kind of end of the year party. Like, it's bad enough that I was a guy just want to come in and go to work. I'm not necessarily your best friend. I don't drink. So I don't know where we're going to, what this all entails, like huddling up together at some fancy place where, by the way, you got to pay for things too. So I know some cops that were like pressured into giving, they weren't going to go, but they paid for a seat. There was pressure. I'm not one to cave to pressure. So I never saw, why, what is the plus of going to one of these parties? Because usually you hear about all these issues at the end of the year and the NYPD happen at these parties. This thing just happens to be a very egregious one. But, a few years ago, you had the guy that was, remember, he came drunk. I think he took the RMP, which is the police vehicle. He drove it drunk or something after the party. There was a big thing with that. There was the lap dance from the 4-4, that party. I mean, it's always something you hear. I don't see the benefit of having something like this. You could always have a quiet thing,
John Magnani actually referenced to it. He says, I guess the Christmas party lap dances have evolved. You're right. And that's why I say the upper echelon of this administration, while there is appearance of propriety, there's corruption probe going on. There's no doubt about it. We pretty much have some overwhelming evidence that there's a vast amount of corruption going on at the upper echelon. But one thing I can tell you about that, let's put aside this corruption probe. These guys are plain stupid. Plain stupid. You had a Christmas party in the 4-4 precinct a few years ago that made the public eye, where a female police officer was completely berated. Her whole appearance was destroyed because she gave a lap dance to a lieutenant. And they made this more than what it is. We don't know the full context of it. Were they joking around? But the bottom line is what was stupid is you have to be smart. The upper echelon has to be smart because the cops at this party actually leaked that information. They're stupid. First of all, if you're going to go to a party like that and play these kind of games, you should tell everybody, put your phones away. Now, I'm not saying it's right, but you got to be smart. And these guys are just plain stupid. But when you're having a Christmas party that's NYPD operated and monitored, you're going to have a best dress just for females. You don't think the appearance of that alone just looks ridiculous? Marlon had made a comment here. Marlon, I agree with you. Marlon says, how could Stevenson not think this wasn't going to be an OEEO complaint? That's why I'm saying the upper echelon is just so stupid. Patrick Jordan, shout out to you, our friend from LA County Sheriff's Chief. How many officers did these chiefs discipline for sexual harassment? That's a great point. Who are they disciplining for sexual harassment when they themselves peddle and influence the most amount of sexual harassment? Jeffrey Madry's monsters around him. And Stevenson, make no mistake about it, Jeffrey Madry is one of his mentors. He's part of that entire circle that brought him in. Absolutely disgusting. But they just played stupid. Rich Rod, shout out to you, brother. $20 coffee and donuts. Says, good morning and happy Monday morning, everyone. Another great show, guys. Thank you so much. So, Sal, what are your thoughts on that as far as the stupidity of it? Do you believe that that's corruption? Do you think they're just stupid? Do they sound like dirty old men? I think they sound like creeps. Like, and yet they'll embarrass these women. Because I worked with a female sergeant in PSA 7, and she was completely destroyed publicly. She got caught shoplifting. Now, I'm not saying it's right, but they took pictures of her where she was dressed at some of these Christmas parties that were kind of scandalous pictures, right? She was kind of top heavy, if you know what I mean. And they put those pictures everywhere, and they really just annihilated her and totally abused her. And no one protected her. So what do you think is going to happen with these pictures at this Christmas party? I think it's absolutely insane. They're stupid. That, to me, this girl has the bottom line is this lieutenant has a lawsuit. You know, I know they want to try to spear her, say there was some other lawsuit. Maybe she's trying to target to get money. But to me, the appearance is there. I would like to know what kind of text messages were involved. You know, was he texting her, hey, you're going to look good? What are you going to wear? I wouldn't be surprised. What do you think about that? Do you think there's text messages with this? How far do you think internal affairs will go? Because this is now the upper echelon of the police department. We're not talking about the lower ranks, if any. What do you think the Internal Affairs Bureau will do?
We're going to see what they do because, as you know, they were hiding a lot when it comes to when Miguel Iglesias was in charge, which happened underneath him. Because, see, here's a theme here, which, again, people should be focused on. EEO, the Office of Equity and Inclusion. Remember, the head of that is Wendy Garcia, who is also being investigated by the feds right now for her role in basically getting rid of every EEO complaint that had some kind of ties to nepotism or cronyism involving one of the upper echelon or one of their ilk. And, you know, and here's someone, J Creations NY, $9.99 for espresso and bagels. Worked with her in transit, treated me well. What I will say is that she is smart and knows her stuff and never had a problem calling the higher ups on their BS. So you see, here's somebody, and here's someone who's saying, this woman is not one to go along with the program. So the next step for them would be, we have to destroy them. And we've seen this pattern with everyone, right? Whether it was Latina, these are people that sued the NYPD for sexual harassment. You had Latina Brown. We have Dana Ratchlin, who's been absolutely ostracized for her complaint. We had that sergeant with Tim Pearson, right? You had there was the heads there, the inspector of that unit, that he got destroyed. His career was basically over. So you see a pattern of retaliation if you either know about or try to defend or tell them, look, what you're doing is wrong, or you don't go along with the program. So, and it's a repeated pattern. Even the woman that sued Eric Adams for sexual harassment from 30 years ago in transit. She was a transit aide, PEA, and he's saying she's a liar, she's this, she's that, but she happened to work with him in the transit guardian. So they have a problem, and one of the problems is that the EEO office was covering this kind of stuff up, and they did it for certain people while others they made a big deal about, and you can't do that. And that's the issue here with this party in particular. You're saying EEO approved this, which means Wendy Garcia, another frequenter, by the way, of Concel Frito, where this kind of stuff was going on all the time. So Wendy Garcia should be in the forefront. I don't understand why she's not being named as a defendant here, nor Jeffrey Madry, who was there in person as a judge. So that means that the chief of department gave you the nod on top of it. So the fact that it involves all these high-end people, again, in this party doing this stupid thing and approving this just shows there's a lack of integrity from anyone on top. On top of this, whether it's the administration itself or the New York State Police Department, there's like zero integrity. And I keep pointing out that, you know, as a cop, you might come into work and wear white socks and get charges and specs over that. Whereas if you were over here sexually harassing someone and it's a high-ranking person and his crew, the cronies, nothing happens to you. That is a big, drastic problem. And this is why the morale is in the toilet in the New York City Police Department. Because you know, if you're just a person that comes in, wants to do their job and go home, you go to work, you might get trounced on. Forget about stomped. You're going to get trounced. Whereas if you are part of this crew doing all kinds of borderline criminal stuff or criminal stuff, nothing's going to happen to you. It's just like a gangster in a badge, wearing a badge. That's all.
You got the finest Unfiltered family. John couldn't make it today. And, of course, Sal Greco was kind enough to step in. So like, share, and subscribe. If you like the content, we appreciate it. Again, like, share, and subscribe. Shout out to Jesse James, $4.99 coffee and donuts. And for my man Sal, Paisan, what is it, espresso and bagels? bagels and cream cheese?
That's espresso and bagels or cappuccino and bagels. So no
It's
coffee.
$4.99. The supervisors in certain, think about this, the supervisors in certain units or details were basically forced to sell tickets to their cops or they would be booted out of their spots. You know, that's a great point, Jesse James. Shout out to you. So think about it. You're a supervisor or you're in these commands, and we know the people that would actually sell the tickets. There was a lot of pressure on them to have all these tickets sold, to have everyone show up to these Christmas parties. But think about it. If you're aware of this $700 trophy for best dressed female at your Christmas party, you might think to yourself, man, I don't want to sell these tickets. Do I want to be involved in this? Especially if you're a female sergeant that's actually selling this tickets. Like, it's almost like you're, why don't we just start an OnlyFans page with the NYPD at this point? I mean, this is ridiculous, right? And you know what's interesting? I just want to reflect on this, right? So I don't know if you know, I spent a lot of time in Asia, but I've studied a lot on the Asian culture. I was a history major in college, and I studied the history in Japan and China. And in Japan, there is a culture, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, there's a culture where people work, that it's considered part of the job, that certain days of the week, after work, everyone goes out and has a beer together. And that's considered part of your job. And it's kind of frowned upon if you don't show up. In order to get promoted, move up, it's considered part of your day to mingle and be part of a social club in connection to the job. And I get it, right? Because you want to build relationships, but you want to build relationships. I'm not saying it should be boring. It should be fun, but to the point where, we're basically utilizing these women to gawk at them because you can. I mean, if these guys never got promoted within the NYPD, you think a bunch of women are getting dressed up for these clowns? I mean, come on. Jeffrey Madry is not exactly Don Juan, and neither are any of these folks. I know some of these folks love themselves and think they're the most amazing thing, God's gift. But what do you think as far as this party actually going through? Don't you think Internal Affairs should have intercepted this before they actually had this function? What are we doing here? We're having a best dressed female contest. We know how bad it could be. Most females probably don't want to partake in it, but let's be honest. There's probably a couple that want to take that opportunity to show off. Maybe they'll take off a little more clothing than they should because they want to get that first grade detective, right? Let's be honest. There's two different types of females. Some females will say, I don't want no part of this. And some women will be like, you know what? I'll take the opportunity and I'll get myself promoted. But Internal Affairs should have intercepted this before it even got to this point. Again, another failure on Internal Affairs. We proved it. Sal, you, Marlon, myself, and John, we've debunked and proved that the Internal Affairs Bureau is not there to investigate the upper echelon. It's to protect the upper echelon and deflect it to lower ranks within the police department. There's a New York Times article that just came out. Here's another appearance of impropriety where Stevenson is actually noted and actually indicated in this particular article. And in this article, it talks about a bootlegging operation. And I'd like to read this to you. And somehow information that leads out. In the New York Times article, check it out. It's a good article. It says, a gregarious man born in the Dominican Republic, Mr. Peralta, 39, was friends with several officers from nearby precincts. Men who called him bro and regularly texted him with gossip. In April 2013, 2 months after getting the tipster's letter, Internal Affairs sent undercover detectives to speak with him at his restaurant. This is going back to 2013. According to court papers, the detectives pretended that they wanted Mr. Peralta's help with an outstanding ticket. Mr. Peralta told them that he had a very good relationship with Inspector Stevenson and trying to be helpful, passed along his number. And it actually goes further into this article, and it says that Stevenson is known as a corrupt commander. Now, I'm not saying that he is, but there is an allegation in the New York Times article. And I don't think the New York Times would actually put out information unless they really had some teeth to it. The New York Times, in many cases, they do go left with a lot of information, but they do try to get fact-based information. And the preponderance of evidence is usually there when they put something out. What are your thoughts on this New York Times article that talks about a bootlegging operation? Let me just give you some background information to this. So apparently there was a bootlegging operation that went from New York to New Hampshire and Massachusetts, distributing all kinds of untaxed cologne, liquor bottles, things like that. And somehow there was a connection to Reichberg, right, who's now serving 48 months in prison, who's part of the bribery case with who? Unindicted co-conspirator Philip Banks. And apparently in this New York Times article, Stevenson was also mentioned as a corrupt commander. So again, the more appearance of impropriety, why would you, if there's an appearance of impropriety and fingers already being pointed at you, why would you have a best dressed female contest and have more eyes on you than there already are? Because they're all stupid. That's the problem. What are your thoughts, Sal?
I remember this story well because this is like the original Conso Frito before they came up with that concept in the Bronx. This place was on the 2-8 precinct, I believe. It was when you spin in under the FDR when you come off. That was the nightclub. It was right down on that strip underneath there. I remember it well because that was a spot that many people came out stumbling DWI, and certain people come out and they go, do you know who I am? If you pull them over. So this was a spot, and Stevenson was the main guy in the middle of it, where this nightclub was like an untouchable place, but yet you wonder why. And then so many people were involved, including the Reichberg guy and Banks. And that's the only reason he still kept his job, besides the fact that maybe they're all pictured as Freemasons, apparently. That's another conspiracy. You had a picture of Stevenson and Madry and Eric Adams and Jeffrey Madry and Caban. They were all pictured at some Freemason meetings. So a lot of people hit me with that. I don't know what that really means because I don't know about Freemason conspiracy stuff. But this nightclub, I remember it well. And there was so much mishigas going on there. It reminds me of the latest thing that was going on in the Bronx. It's the same kind of stuff. So, and Stevenson was the central figure. And I actually forgot, somebody wrote in the comments about Captain Gabby Walls. That's someone I know. I came up through, when I was a rookie, she was a sergeant for us and Impact. And also, we also worked with Juanita Holmes at that time. She was also a sergeant. And what's funny is the career path of one Gabby Walls and Juanita Holmes, where Juanita Holmes went on to become what is she? She was the head of the academy, and and Gabby Walls is meanwhile as being, she's up there in Manhattan North or whatever, and there's never any chance for a promotion for Gabby Walls, but Juanita Holmes just skyrocketed through the ranks, and that just to show you, because at the same time they were both sergeants. Both were pretty nice with all of us, especially rookies, and then as time went on. Gabby more than Juanita Holmes, I'd say. And I know Gabby's family. And what she's saying, I think is 100% true, because she had to leave the precinct when Madry was around, and Inspector Henderson. So, again, it's the same crew doing the same things, and they just think they can do whatever they want. We see EEO only steps in certain situations. They don't step in on everything the way they should be doing. And what you went back to and you said legal, right? You did a party, you mentioned there was a 1013 party. And you, Eric, said you had to go through the steps and you had to get approvals, and it took a while just to put on the party.
Through internal affairs. Through internal affairs, Sal.
So how do you get this through? Or how do you get all those other fraternal parties through? Especially at Conso Frito, where everything and anything was going on. Or Zona de Cuba, or any of these places where, Zona de Cuba had an incident where a woman was raped by 2 cops. That place is still open, by the way. That would shut down anyone else. If you're the common guy that had cops raping your patrons, you're not going to survive that. But Zona de Cuba, who had Fernando Mateo as one of the owners, survives. That's a good friend of Eric Adams. So that shows you what's going on here. And you got to focus in on what the hell is illegal. Why is legal not doing anything about all these stupid parties? And maybe now might be different under the red herring there, the billionaire Harris, Jessica Tish, who never does anything. It's all rearranging the furniture. But in this time frame, what we're looking at, and for many years, we wonder how these parties and all this stuff gets put through, and legal just sits there and has no problem. Because in fact, in that article, it says legal said they had no idea. They never have an idea with this stuff, but they had an idea about your party, Eric. That's funny.
I gotta laugh. Richie O, shout out to you. 1999, more coffee and donuts for Sal Greco. It's espresso and bagels. Paisan. Leaders lead, and people will naturally follow bosses. Have to threaten because they are not leaders. Let me read that again, because now I see the context is different. Leaders lead, and people will naturally follow bosses. Bosses have to threaten because they are not leaders. That you're absolutely right. leaders are also hold strong to what's right. Bosses cave. That's a great point. That's funny you say that, Riccio. Shout out to you, because I used to tell cops when they would transition to sergeant, and I would say, "Do you want to be a leader, or do you want to be a boss?" And there is an absolute difference. I always say I'd much rather be a leader, because as a leader, you are a boss, but you can be a boss and not necessarily a leader. And my pet peeve always, what really would irk me, and I would just totally cringe, is when sometimes certain sergeants would give directives and a cop would ask, right? And I would say the reason why the cop is asking a question, one, they're either disrespectful, most of them are not, right? If you have a level of respect. The second reason why they ask questions is because you left them in the dark. You weren't clear and concise with your directive. And so sometimes those sergeants, because they're insecure, instead of actually explaining to the cop so that the message is actually clear, they point to their stripes and they go like this. And I used to say I have a problem with that. I said, I could walk into a command. I don't need a uniform. I don't need a shirt on. They knew I was the boss because I tried to be a leader. I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but that's what you want to be. You want to be a leader. Ron Layson says, in honor of the Super Bowl, what is the concept free throws over and under? Absolutely. I think it's already 2. Ron Layson, I know you're keeping a tally. And we got Fernando Mateo. So, shout out to Sal. But the bottom line is this, and you're right. I threw a 10-13 party. I think it was 2016. For one of I was actually a special operations lieutenant at this time, but it was one of my police officers that was actually on one of my crime teams in PSA 4. And unfortunately, he was suffering from leukemia. And the hoops and obstacles that I had to go through to hold a 10-13 to raise money from him was astronomical. I had to get log numbers from internal affairs. I had to get a representative at the location to do a warrant check on the representative of the bar restaurant that we were holding this event. And when the event was over, I also had to give follow-up information on how much money was raised, where the money came from to show receipts, and a post follow-up synopsis of the event. And this all had to be turned over to Internal Affairs and the Intelligence Division. I find it hard to believe that Internal Affairs is actually vetting properly a Christmas party where we have the best dressed female. Again, total appearance of impropriety. So speaking of, before we get on to our next topic, because the content is endless, shout out to you, Stephen S., by the way. Thank you so much. He says, exactly, Eric. We don't operate out of vagueness. All supervisors should read The Art of War. Lessons can be applied to policing. I love The Art of War. Not only is it just for leaders, it's something you should live by. But Sal, now that we have Police Commissioner Tish, this best dressed contest was not under her behest. But now that she's in a position of leadership, how should she move forward if she should do anything?
Well, I guess, you'd have to have a good head of EEO and legal saying that you can't do these things. I mean, having a party is one thing, having contests like that is another. But, I got to point something out here that I seen, and I hate to do this because this guy's a little bit of a hater. This guy, Grunt, or I don't know, Joe Cop should be his real name. He says, Concha Frito is just another filthy restaurant that Caban and Jimmy used as a tax write-off and delivered favors. Half of New York City restaurants just the same. That's the reality of New York City nightlife. Actually, no, you're absolutely so far off base. You have no idea what you're talking about because you're Joe Cop. So this is what. Let me inform you. The reason that place is so important is because it was a hub for virtually the entire upper echelon of the police department, every major politician in New York City, and of course, everyone's favorite Attorney General, Letitia James. If you haven't noticed over the weekend, my friend Roger Stone and also our friend Sam Antar put out something that even the president himself posted. I'm sorry I haven't posted Grunt, the Joe Cop. I guess I don't know how important you are to President Trump, but they are posting things that Roger Stone and Sam Antar are both helping to uncover. And that's the fact that Letitia James has properties she didn't put down on her little campaign finance disclosures and all that. And that's the kind of stuff that was going on in that place in particular. You're right. You mentioned Jimmy, the self-admitted criminal mob associate. And I know how all of his friends, and probably some of you might be, you're trying to deflect and act like, oh, it's closed and nothing to look at. No. That's not how this works. You actually have to go back and look because you got away with years worth of stuff where you had politicians and all kinds of people that may or may not have been on the take. If you're looking very closely, though, you see that all this criminality is there And I see who there: Letitia James, Eric Adams, Carl Hasty. I think the lieutenant governor was there. All these people that are in position of major, like law enforcement or the head law enforcement agent in the state, they're standing right there as this stuff goes on. And then you have all these other allegations that occurred. There was a human trafficking report that came out of there. But you think it's not important because Joe Kopp knows better, because, you know, he's from the job and he's from the culture, and maybe he just doesn't like us. And good thing that the world doesn't operate on feelings, because we'd be in trouble. Okay, you got to actually lead where the facts go. And the facts are leading straight to Letitia James right now. But, you know, let's not look there, because Joe Kopp knows better and he doesn't like John, Eric, or myself. So just, you know, I want to throw that little tidbit out there. But, Eric, I think on the Tish, at least this is going to at least calm down, because I think they're very well aware of all this stuff going on. And this can't continue, because then, you know, they're going to hit. She's going to be the 4th police commissioner where this stuff is going on under. And I think Eric Adams knows that the writing's on the wall for himself too. So I don't think you may hear some things, because there's always something. This isn't strange. Hearing this is nothing strange to any one of us, because it's been going on for years. It's just that the level that it happened under this administration, and the fact that now you're in the age of social media, many people self-impressed, can't stop taking videos and pictures of themselves with these clowns and just saying, here I am, you know, do what you want with my pictures and videos. And that kind of stuff is the reason it's leading to all of this stuff that you're hearing, all this behavior, which really it shouldn't be happening, especially in a police department. That's the kind of thing you don't expect. Not hanging out with your buddy who's a political operative and saying, oh, well, he's a criminal and you're all criminals. The real criminality was going on right underneath your nose. And technically, it was happening right in front of your face. You just had to go on social media, you could see it.
Well, before we segue into the next topic, because the content just doesn't stop. Marlon, shout out to you, brother. Good morning. Finest Unfiltered family says, which leads to the allegations raised by the brother who had the bar in Coney Island. Absolutely. So listen, I get it. Some people want to troll, and some people want to say that Concha Fritos is not at the epicenter of the allegations and the hypocrisy of the wrongful termination Sal Greco. And also, totally, we can weave this into what's going on with the appearance of impropriety and the corruption probe with former police commissioner Ed Caban and his brother, twin brother, James Caban. Absolutely. Because also, who is the SLA holder of Concha Fritos? Is Richard Caban. So it's all tied together. Absolutely. So it's actually very important. And when we talk about the March operation, into how they transition into CURE, you know, these are acronyms for the operations at bars, we can see that Concha Fritos was completely the winner by that and unaffected by a March operation as they went into this whole CURE operation, which was completely, you know, evading from giving summonses. So sure, any other bar out there should feel completely slighted. Like, hey, man, if I had all these nefarious characters and I had politicians at my place, I could do whatever I want. No one would actually check on us. So absolutely, Concha Fritos is on it. So here we go with before we go ahead, Rob Lucash says, bottom line, these parties are just for people to kiss the ring. Just have your own unit party. Waste of time and money. Yes, Rob Lucash, I agree. You know, it was posed to me also. I remember when I got promoted to Lieutenant Special Assignment and they had a housing bureau party. It was, oh, you got to go. You got to go. You got promoted. It's like, I got promoted because of the work that I'm doing out in the streets. I have to go. I didn't want to go. But of course, you know, I ended up going. So, yeah, a lot of times you get pushed into these parties. So let's segue into the next topic. Now, my phone has been off the hook. It hasn't stopped. And there's different, I would say at this point, hold on a second, I got a train going by you. This is what it's like being in the mountains of California. But the bottom line is this. When it comes to Cralo cars, which we spoke about, right? Those are cars rented and leased by the NYPD. Separate to that, people have what's called Category 1, Category 2, and Category 3 cars. These are unmarked cars that are owned by the police department. And with these categories, it gives specific information on how these cars can be utilized. So there was an article that surfaced, and we're going to bring up that article in a moment. And the article surfaced about a lieutenant within the police department that falls under the umbrella of the Community Affairs Division. And this lieutenant, and apparently, according to the article, it doesn't say what category car that he had. It appears that he had a category 2 based on the information and based on my observations of reading it. Now, with a category 2 car is an unmarked department vehicle that must be stored at a department facility, and it may be stored at a department facility other than the one you're assigned. Ready for this? If it's specifically designated by the police commissioner. And it also goes further into this procedure that the car could be parked at different locations if it's authorized by a competent authority. Now, this lieutenant in particular, who's the competent authority in charge? That would be Rocket Fuel Victoria Perry. Victoria Perry that was promoted by Rocket Fuel. So this lieutenant in particular is working in Manhattan in the Community Affairs Division, lives on Staten Island, and he parks his car at the teleport. If anybody's familiar with Staten Island, the teleport is off of South Avenue in Staten Island. That's where you have some industrial buildings there. Apparently, there's an NYPD location, the Youth Administration or Youth Services Division, something like that. That's really not important, at the teleport. So the question is, does that youth location fall under the umbrella of community affairs? Does this lieutenant have the authority to park his car there? Does he have professional business at the teleport? And if so, is this misconduct or is it corruption? Now, my phone was going off the hook. Now, I'm just going to preface this and say I don't believe that it's corruption. I believe that this is small potatoes when we compare to what's going on with the upper echelon right now. Apparently, there was definitely some type of complaint. Maybe someone has a problem with this lieutenant. This lieutenant has 2 CCRBs to his name, which is surprising. One of them actually was sustained with charges with only 2 CCRBs. Now, when it comes to this lieutenant, his name is Joseph A. Abdelmessi, if I'm actually saying that right. And this lieutenant was utilizing a Category 2 vehicle, parking in Staten Island and working in Manhattan. And the article indicates that he's evading the toll and evading congestion pricing, and the investigation comes from DOI. So it's interesting who actually made this complaint. Could be the upper echelon, maybe trying to deflect stuff from themselves. Where I have a problem with this is where I have a problem. Because the Easy Pass is authorized. You're authorized to use particular tolls according to the admin procedure in the NYPD. But where I have a problem with this is he's starting his tour in Staten Island, then driving to Manhattan. So we know with traffic, sometimes that could be an hour, maybe more than an hour. By the time he gets into work and actually starts his day, he's probably 2 hours into it. That's a benefit that most of us have. That's where I have a problem. Is it corruption? I believe it's misconduct. So that's the question. Sal, I know that you're furious by this. I'd love to get your thoughts. Do you believe it's misconduct? Do you believe it's corruption? Do you believe there's more going on than what's here, or just maybe someone that doesn't like this lieutenant?
It's a little bit of all what you just said. There is definitely misconduct. And yeah, I mean, he did violate some rules and laws, but he's doing it at the behest of a supervisor. And he's really a small potato in the grand scheme of things. Out of this kind of stuff, you do have the Crowler car stuff, but you have the worst of all of this scenario. What you just said is the fact that it is Kaz Daughtry who is allegedly having a security detail. First of all, Kaz Daughtry signing in from his house. I know people say they sign in because the other problem is people, you're supposed to be at work and you sign in at Highway 3, or you sign in from the teleport, or you sign in from a medical division. I don't know people that sign in from their home and they're doing this not once or twice. This is like every day, which is Kaz Daughtry was doing apparently. And his security detail came to pick him up and then put his children in the car and dropped his children off to school. And this was a daily occurrence, which, that puts the city in a liability risk if anything happens to them or they get into an accident. And they had no problem with this because then they just kept driving and Kaz Daughtry showed up and he could have been 2 hours late. We don't know. But that's a misuse of time. And then he was putting in for overtime slips afterwards. So he put in for overtime slips while he's an executive and getting cash for it, while, that is another thing that you can't do. So out of the whole scenario, if you saw what I had posted in regards to the article, this lieutenant, as bad as this is, and it is egregious, he's the small potatoes when that is the top thing that could occur, is what I just stated with Kaz Dodrick. So in between, you have all these other issues that occurred and other people doing other things. But if you're going to go after that lieutenant, then very clearly you need to start at Kaz Dodrick from the top.
Well, that's my point. I think you're absolutely right when you say this is small potatoes. I say the same thing in compared to what's going on with the upper echelon. But let's dissect this and let's break this down for a moment. We have a lieutenant who's authorized to have a Category 2 car. So it's important we understand the different categories of the cars. Now, Category 1 car, it makes sense, right? For the most part, it's commanding officers, executive officers. They have an unmarked car that is funded by the police department that's not required to be stored at a department facility, which means it could be stored at their home. It could be stored outside the city, right? And they can utilize it at any time. Now, it makes sense to me. You're a commanding officer. Let's say, for instance, you're the commanding officer of the 4-7 precinct. That's the most northern part of the Bronx. Odds are that commanding officer, because I can tell you right now, he probably lives in Rockland County or Orange County upstate. So he's going to take that car home. And there is plenty of chance that that commanding officer may get a call at 3 o'clock in the morning that he has to respond because one of his cops was involved in an off-duty incident, and it could be somewhere upstate New York. So that commanding officer is going to take that car to another location. Now, when it comes to that, I believe that once he gets that phone call, he's on duty. And I have no problem, and I'm sure most people with common sense, and let's be fair, even though this upper echelon is plagued with the appearance of impropriety, let's be fair, I believe there's no issue if he started work at that point. That's an inconvenience. You've answered the call. Go take a shower, grab a cup of coffee. You're on your way to work. I have no issues with that. Now, when we talk about a Category 2 car, right? Sometimes we talk about benefits and perks. Now, I'm a firm believer that every job should have some form of a perk. If you worked at Home Depot, you get a discount. Now, I have no problem with some perks within law enforcement, right? These things incentivize people to do a better job, which is why executive officers were issued Category 1 cars prior to earlier years to incentivize lieutenants to take the test to make captain, because in many cases, it just wasn't worth it. So that's an added benefit to incentivize lieutenants to take the job, to have a car that you can take home. You can start your tour once you get that call. Now, that, to me, a Category 1 car makes complete sense. Now, when we talk about a Category 2 car, that's an unmarked department vehicle assigned to someone based on the nature of their assignment. Now, I don't understand why a Community Affairs Division lieutenant needs a Category 2 car. Where are you going? What are you doing? I mean, unless you just, you're helping out with complete disorder. I don't see why a Community Affairs Division lieutenant needs it. Now, is the teleport connected to the youth division? Is that connected to Community Affairs? Not sure. But here's what comes into place. And now, according to Lou Turco, in the article, Lou Turco says that it was authorized. And then at some point, he was told to stop doing it, and he did. So he complied. Now, if he was told by competent authority, now I don't know if they're competent, but if he was told by Victoria Perry, his boss, that he could use the car, he could park there, and he could start his tour there, then you know what? Then he did nothing wrong. But here's the problem. When he gets questioned on the carpet, will Victoria Perry say, yeah, I gave him full authorization? So this is a message to the troops out there, and even if you're a lieutenant, you're active right now within the police department, write down the information. Document it somewhere. Who authorized you to have such a vehicle, where and when you could park it? Make sure that you actually document this, because we know when Jeffrey Badry was put on the carpet, when there was a full press conference with his attorney, he threw everyone under the bus and tried to distract and divert the attention from himself. That's what he did. John Brooks, comment here. As an ex-board member of one of the societies, I've seen the corruption in wheeling and dealing. It might not be cash bribes. It's usually dinners, gifts, tickets to shows, etc. You're right. But I don't think this is a form of corruption. The Easy Pass is something that's utilized to use. I think it is a form of misconduct if he did not get the authority to park the car in Staten Island, which is apparently, according to this article, 6 miles from home. Obviously, that's convenient. That would be a perk to him, which I don't have a problem if it was authorized. I do have a problem. Why does he need to start his tour when you're already having that added benefit of not paying the toll and congestion pricing in Staten Island? Now, if he actually has business at that location and then he drives to Manhattan and he's on duty, fine. But that's where I have a problem in it. Now, according to these Category 2 cars, do you believe it's something that should be revamped? Do you believe that the system that they have in place right now is accurate? Do you believe there's actual accountability for it? Because when we compare this to the Craylo cars, that's where it's total misuse. These cars that are rented and leased, where we have people abusing it and utilizing it for their families, that's where the problem is. So let's compare, right? We have this issue with the lieutenant. We have credible information from credible sources rumored that Kaz Daughtry utilizes his security detail to pick him up, to pick up his kids while he starts his job and then gets to work. What are your thoughts on that?
To me, as a taxpayer, and not to Joe Kopp, who keeps commenting in the comments, fellow Marine, all this other stuff. Listen, I don't know who that guy is. I don't know if he was in a squad. Maybe I don't know if they were solving crimes from the station house or the bar. Those, just to throw that one out there. But the truth here, what I speak of and what Eric speaks of, are what the public needs to know, not what Joe Kopp knows. That lieutenant might have been authorized. That's true. But what he did is still a crime. The answer is going to be yes, it's a misuse of funds. It's a misuse of what you're doing. You're not supposed to be subverting tolls and not using your own car. And that's what technically it is. Now, if his supervisor told him that, then that's a big problem for Victoria Perry and that whole community affairs group. Because if you're authorizing stuff, and look, Victoria Perry has 3 things underneath her belt. One is she had a funeral for a mom that apparently she authorized. She ordered cops to go. They didn't want to go. They didn't have to go, but they were ordered to go and put in overtime slips. That was one thing that came up that we know about. The second one was, I hate to break Grunt's, whatever his real name is his thinking, but she was apparently steering funds into your favorite nightclub there in the Bronx with Chief Tolentino, who mysteriously is no longer on the job and put his papers in because, he was also involved in another scandal with bulletproof vests going to the Dominican Republic, and no one knows who approved that one. And now you're hearing this with Victoria Perry yet again involved in something. So, yeah, it goes on the leadership because, again, that's the biggest problem here. But the Category 1 and 2 and 3 cars, the way that's written, would be correct if you follow those rules. The Crowell car kind of jumps in because they're trying to say these are Category 1, and then he ripped the black boxes out. They took now the only way you could tell where this car is through those toll. When you take they zap the pictures on the highway. That's how they even knew anything is going on with a Crowell car, because these cars that belong to the executives they took the Crowell cars and they were giving them away to their friends and their family and their spouse, and that is a problem. You don't see that. I don't know what to tell you. You might have too many beers in your day, but that tells a taxpayer you're misusing my money, taxpayer money, to go and do this crazy stuff that's not authorized. It's nowhere is it written that you could do this, and you're running a rogue agency that taxpayers are funding. You want to do this on your own? That's fine, but not at taxpayers' expense. So maybe you got to drill that into some, especially Joe Kopp, who knows it all, their heads.
Yeah, I understand your frustration. I think you lay it out pretty well, right? Because the appearance of impropriety with the upper echelon at this point is so vast that they can't be trusted. But to me, I find it quite peculiar that this came out about this lieutenant. I think that it really is minor. It's something that actually shouldn't even been public. I don't even think the media should have bid onto this, especially what's going on right now with the upper echelon. So to me, I'm curious, honestly, if this was a complaint by someone at the upper echelon to put the focus on this lieutenant, because it's odd. This investigation and this complaint went to DOI. It didn't go to internal affairs. And it's odd that this actually was public at all, because this is something that is practice that happens often in the police department, right? Technically, you're not supposed to have a member of the service, a non-member of the service in your car, or a member of the service that's not doing official business in your car. Technically, you're not supposed to park it at locations when you're not working there and you don't have any professional business. But I don't believe it's actual corruption in the grand scheme of things. If he's taking the car to go to Atlantic City with his family or something like that, to me, yeah, that's total corruption. But this article wants to direct your attention, saying that he's trying to avoid congestion pricing and tolls. I think it's the whole thing where he's trying to get a benefit out of it, right? The benefit of not having to pay the toll. I mean, let's be honest. If you had a benefit, you had an opportunity as a lieutenant to not pay the toll and still do your job, you would take it, right? If this was something that was authorized by competent authority. And when we look at this cop's record, I don't see, when we look at 58, I don't see anything blaring. To me, I don't think it's somebody that was out there doing police work. But to me, it appears it's something from the upper echelon, or maybe someone has it out for this lieutenant. Drone Ranger says, no way. This was a vengeful, scorned subordinate of this lieutenant. Yeah, that's the other aspect of it. At Drone Ranger, I think you're right. It could be a scorned person also that worked for this lieutenant and made a complaint. I think it could be both ways. It could be the upper management. It could be someone that worked for this lieutenant. Probably, I was going to get into that. Probably most likely a scorned subordinate, because why would the upper echelon want to get Victoria wrapped into this when she's part of their crew, right? She was promoted by Rocket Fuel. But I just don't think it's corruption. I have a problem, though. I think I have a problem because I knew many cops who struggled. I mean, think about this. He has the benefit of parking his car at the teleport and then saying he's on duty and then drive to Manhattan to start his tour. And from the teleport with traffic, that could be a substantial amount of time by the time you're actually at work. Now let me say this. I have no problem. Let's say he parks his car at the teleport. He has some type of business in there. Maybe it's only a couple of minutes. And then he's on the phone for over an hour conducting business while he's trying to drive to Manhattan. Honestly, I don't have a problem with that either. He's actually actively working. I know as a sergeant, as a lieutenant, my phone, John knows it too. We used to talk about it all the time. Our phones were off the hook. How many times do we answer and fend phone calls from home and never get paid for it? So that's wrong also, right? We have to look at it from both sides of the coin. I know from the civilian perspective, from someone that's not a cop, that really doesn't understand the inner linings of the police department, it looks terrible, right? If you just look at it on the surface, this lieutenant, he avoids congestion pricing, he avoids the tolls, he parks there. It looks terrible. But what's terrible is the rumor that Kaz Daughtry has he's not picking up his kid by himself or taking his kid to school, that he's having the security detail pick him up with his kid, bringing them to school, and then starting the tour. And that is something that, if that rumor is true, he's doing it because he can. I worked with many, many female police officers who, they had to bust their ass and pump for 2 hours because they were breastfeeding. They had to pump for 2 hours before work, get their kids to work, to school, and then go to work. Nobody gave them a stipend. Nobody helped them out. Here's John McCary. Brother, good morning. He put, I had a Cat 2, worked for a citywide unit, was on call, had to report to commands all over the city. Most of the week, just like this lieutenant. This was authorized and done by many throughout the city. This isn't corruption. It's a deflection of the actual corruption that is occurring. Yes. And that's why I said, shout out to you, John. Good morning, brother. I know you run around doing things. But I agree, right? I said it could be from the upper echelon. Drone Ranger says it could be from a subordinate, which I think. But to me, I agree that this could be deflection. If this is completely authorized, then he didn't do nothing wrong. But the problem is, they'll leave him hanging. Will they answer for it? And Sal, you know the truth. Let's compare this to the Craylo cars. And let's talk about the box, removing the black box. Why are we not investigating to find out who's removing those boxes? Who's removing the boxes, right? What are your thoughts on that?
The Cralo car is a lot more serious than this kind of stuff. Like I said, I don't know. And now it looks like Joe Cops are making sense. I don't know why they were jumping down my throat. The article itself is done in a way where you're trying to, if you're trying to say that this lieutenant and this lieutenant alone, that's crazy, because this guy is not operating by himself. He's not a rogue cop per se. He is doing something wrong, but he's being told to do something wrong as well. So that, again, they'll go back to the top. But the article is done sort of in a way where it is a hit piece. That I'll give to you, because I don't really know the guy other than a hole in the wall. Sure, if this guy called me an emotionally disturbed person to some cops in the Bronx, and now he's in trouble, though. Sorry, pal. But he is being used as like a scapegoat, trying almost in a way to cover the other part of this, which is a Cralo car, which is not what this guy's doing. The Cralo car is a lot bigger than the use or misuse of the Category 1, because they're using the Cralo cars for Category 1, 2, and 3, and then they're driving around ripping black boxes out so you can't track these cars, and we don't know what they did. Remember, for the average cop in a patrol car, which does have a black box, they get called from the desk when they look at the AVL, which is that's how they look at, for the civilians that are watching. They could track your vehicles your whole tour. So when a cop signs in and he takes his vehicle, they know when the car is off, when it's on, where you're driving. So let's say a cop is driving, like, let's say 1 block off the wherever the precinct is that they're supposed to be in. They could get in trouble for that. They could see that. But when you don't have a black box, which all these Cralo cars, they were ripping them out of, now you don't know where anyone is. So we don't know the whereabouts of Kaz Daughtry. You don't know the whereabouts of Chief so-and-so or Commissioner so-and-so. And that is an issue, because we don't know what they were up to and what they were doing and how or why they were using the car in certain instances. So that, which is where I was trying to point people out, wasn't towards the lieutenant. Somebody wrote an article about it, and I said, well, this guy did this and that. Yeah, you got 20 other things. You have so many bigger things than this guy. Unfortunately, though, technically by the book, by doing that, you're still going to be on the hook for it. Whether, yeah, your supervisor told you to do it, but what does it say in the patrol guide? You're going to fall on that sword. And you know that. You never could say, well, you authorized, because that's how John Shell and company operate. I could tell you, I was there with John Shell saying he wants you to do one thing, and if something goes wrong, what did your training tell you to do? They go right back to whatever the patrol guide says. So they're going to play both sides of that fence. The bottom line is the Cralo car, that is that is such a misuse of money, and it's criminal what they're doing, ripping black boxes, running around with the car, using it for this kind of stuff, taking your kids to school. Nobody knows about it. That is a problem. What this lieutenant did, yeah, it's like a slap on the wrist, but he is being authorized from his boss. So someone needs to go over there and go, well, why are you allowing this? And then take a look at Victoria Perry and her car, because that's where you're going to see some serious stuff. At least that's what I believe.
Well, I think ultimately the issue, of course, is the cars. But when we hear about these rumors with Kaz Daughtry, the ultimate problem with that, of course, is even the fact that they have a security detail. When we talk about predecessors, we talk about the Kelly era, Esposito. Like, we think about strength. We think about men of power. Now, listen, you may agree with Kelly's style of administration as far as micromanaging. Some don't agree. I don't like micromanaging. But now that we're at this point of this ineffective and inept leadership administration, I guess I can understand why Kelly operated with the iron fist, because obviously, based on his observations, he knew where this department could go if you don't operate with the iron fist. But Kelly, Esposito, they didn't have security details. Why would you need a security detail? Not only that, you're in a position where we're talking about crime is down. We talk about perception, reality. We're toting to the world. We're telling the nation, we're telling New York City residents, you're safe. Crime is down. Everything's doing great. And yet, it's just an all-out lie. And yet we have a security detail, but let's not call it a security detail. Really what it is, they're like those people you get when you get, rich people, they get themselves a shopper. They do the shopping for them. That's what they have. They have like shoppers assigned to them, people that they tote them around. They take them around because they can, because they have the power to do it. Shout out to Ron Lacey. Good morning. He says, I don't know that Craylo Confidential Rental Autos had AVLs black box. I think they removed the AVLs from the unmarks assigned to the office and used them for personal use. Yeah, it looks like they, again, that's an issue. I think this whole thing needs to be revamped. Obviously, that it's in the public eye right now. There's no doubt about it. There's some corruption going on with these cars that are rented and leased by the NYPD. We're talking about millions of dollars. We talk about 1013 parties. Now we're talking about Craylo cars. I had to jump through hoops because when I was an anti-crime sergeant, we had a major problem in the Lower East Side where Asians were being attacked. We had a hate crime that was going on for months, to the point that we had to change our tours, and we were working 9:30 at night to 6 in the morning to solve these crimes with these Asians that were just being assaulted at an alarming rate. And I got myself a couple of hybrid cars. They were Craylos, but I had to jump through hoops. The 49s, which is universal form, a write-up and indicate why it was necessary. I had to show all the corresponding reports and actually give a crime analysis on why these cars would be effective. And then I was only allotted it for a short-term period, and I had to bring it back. Sometimes it was 60-day basis, sometimes it was a 90-day basis, but you really have to indicate why you need it. But I think the problem with that, ultimately, that's the appearance of corruption. So I think enough of that. Let's go further. Let's go further because there's always pressing news. Right now, John and I talk about this all the time. Sal, you talk about Marlon talks about it right now. With this 50A, it puts the cops in very precarious positions right now. They're completely vulnerable. It's out of control to the point that it's leading to corruption where police officers may be hamstrung to take actions that they don't want to take to protect themselves and their family. So we have a video we're going to play for you, and I just want to preface it with this. In this video, we have a police officer working in the 17th precinct where he's approached by these First Amendment auditors or these anti-police advocates that want to utilize your 58, and they get in the face of this police officer, and they basically put a cookie in this cop's face. So let's get to this video. I want your thoughts. Jack, let's pull it up.
Oh, shit, you got a donut for him? Yo, he got donuts in the bag. Stop playing with him, bro. See how I gotta hide it from him. This is how you bridge the gap, y'all. I gotta hide it. You heard? This is how y'all bridge the gap in the community. He getting happy already. He's happy as hell. Look at that, y'all. He's about to open up. He's open himself. We got a cookie for him. There you go. Come on, nookie cookie. You know what I mean? I know your snout smell like. Come on. You smell it. You smell like it. He's wafting in the wind like Mickey Mouse. Put some pie at the windowsill. Oh. Hey yo! Stop playing with him.
So first of all, I hate watching these videos. Right? First of all, I'm disgusted by watching these videos, but unfortunately, this is just one of many, right? It's become the point of this is a new phenomenon where police officers are put in these vulnerable positions and they're being verbally harassed. And the bottom line is there is zero directive from the police department, no support on how to take action. And here's the bottom line. If you do take action, you've just walked yourself into a civilian complaint because we all know how is this interaction going to play out? Everyone should be completely perturbed by watching this video. If you're a cop, your blood should be boiling. It's disgusting watching these things. So when you watch this video, Sal, what are your thoughts on that? And think back to when you were a police officer. How would you react? Was there any directive from your supervisors on how to take action when you're completely berated and someone's putting an object in your face, cookie or not? What are your thoughts? How would you operate?
Well, and back in our day, if anything like that did happen, you did go to the pavement and you were put in handcuffs. And not to sound like, you're unconstitutional. There's a limit of how close you could get to someone. Remember, you're always carrying weapons. You have things on you that could be used. Someone could grab it off you. You're in that area, which I believe is always, they always said 21 feet. When you start getting closer and closer and closer, and you want to pull that stunt, see, in New York City, in New York State, there's nothing on the books for that. In Florida, though, South Florida in particular, you can't do that. You will go to jail for that. You're not supposed to jump in someone's face with the cell phone in the face and start reciting 58 and all that. That's stuff that even, I mean, look, I agree that you could do it from a distance because that's a First Amendment right. But to jump in someone's face with objects and stuff, no, that you're antagonizing people. There's no business. You have no business doing that. Now you want to sit on the sidewalk and do that? Even that, I mean, I think that's egregious and shouldn't be allowed, but it is allowed by the law because it's your First Amendment right. But you don't have the right to throw a cookie in someone's face and start making fun of people, no matter who it is, a cop, a firefighter, sanitation worker. You can't do that. That should not be allowed. But only in New York City can you get away with that because the laws favor the criminals and not anyone that's enforcing the law. So there needs to be a directive, a memo, something that says, if this happens to you as an officer, you have to do something. Whether it's a summons, whatever it is, that cannot be allowed. I'm sorry. That is disgraceful that someone's allowed to do that. And I'm sure that's really close. That's not like a camera trick either. This guy looks like he's probably near a sidewalk at the edge of it, taping his friend go right up to his face. I mean, it can't be more than like a foot or two. Like, come on. You can't do that. That's, I don't even know how people want to get that close to someone, especially an officer. And you're berating the guy in front of the station house. But what's on the books for this? Have you read anything, Eric? I haven't read anything in legislation about if someone approaches a police officer within a foot or two of their area, throwing a cookie or saying whatever it is and antagonizing someone. What are you doing in that instance? Are you allowed to arrest this guy? Could you give this guy a summons? Or are they going to say, oh, he's a CCRB and he's going to the trial room. You're going to get 20 days for this? Because that's what this would look like. It's like an entrapment almost.
Well, I got to be honest. I'm not trying to sound like a tough guy, but if this was me, if I was in this position, this would be my 200th or 210th, whatever you can. This would be my next CCRB. There's no doubt about it. And the reason why I say that is because these agitators, and that's exactly what they are putting this cop in a position, and the only outcome is a losing outcome for this cop. Because if this cop takes action, it's going to be a substantiated civilian complaint. It's going to lead to civil litigation. Well, he will not be indemnified. And potentially, just as Ron Layson says here, I want to read his comment. He says, not just a CCRB, but lawsuit, because the DA would never prosecute, and then they hit you with a false arrest suit. Right. So potentially you could find yourself arrested also, because unfortunately, the DA's office, and with a lack of support from the police department, does not give any directive. And there's this ideology that you should have thick skin, not like your mayor, your illustrious mayor, Eric Adams, who can't even handle being questioned by an 80-some-odd-year-old lady who's a Holocaust survivor, asking some serious questions from a distance from the audience. But here you have someone in your face. We're talking about maybe a foot or 2 feet away from his face, putting a cookie in his face to belittle him. Now, let's put aside the fact of being a cop. If you're just everyday Joe and you're a civilian, you should not allow anyone in your personal space. You have a right to your personal space. You have a right to keep yourself safe. Rob Lukash says here, Rob Lukash, by the way, got some great comments as always. Ron Layson, experienced police officers. The officer is put in a completely unsafe position, forced to look away and surrounded. What happens when they jump him and take his gun? That's a great question, right? So for the layman's person, the people that suffer from the Dunning-Kruger effect, that don't understand police work, the armchair critics think, he's just busting his chops. It's just a cookie. Just don't pay attention to it. Guess what? Unlike what Michael Kepis says, don't look them in the eye. You're a police officer. You have to look them in the eye. You have to look them up and down because they are a threat. They're in your personal space. So now, Sal, you asked a good question. You talked about what laws are there. So there was a Supreme Court case that came out several years ago where it changed disorderly conduct. It used to be much easier to actually issue a summons or place someone under arrest for disorderly conduct. But a Supreme Court case had come out, and that Supreme Court case made it much more difficult, created more obstacles and hurdles for police officers to take action to disorderly conduct, which actually coincides to obstruction of governmental administration, which is what's happening here. He's totally diverting the cops' attention from what's going on. To the average person, They don't understand that even though that police officer is not engaged into arrest, that police officer is working. If he is doing his job properly, he's supposed to be canvassing and analyzing his post, and they're diverting his attention and distracting it. So yes, there could be other people that come in to help attack. It could be that serious. We don't know. But the bottom line is the laws and legislation that's on the books have created more obstacles. CCRB is another obstacle for the police officer to take action, and with a lack of support. And also the hiring process. Now, I'm not trying to make fun of this police officer. That's not what I'm doing. I'm not trying to bullet him. I'm talking about the situation. But let's look at this police officer in particular. He's young. You can see he's absolutely young looking. Obviously, probably a rookie on the job. But he's overweight. He's not in shape. Now, I believe if it was you, Sal Greco, or me, or John, or Marlon, or Rob Lukash, or Ron Lace, or someone that shows a presence, you have those masculine traits, and you're ready for battle, and you're ready to engage, you're less likely to have those interactions. Now, I'm not saying they can't happen, but you're less likely. What are your thoughts on the appearance of the police officer and presence and the effect on this and having an impact on this phenomenon that we have right now?
Yeah, I mean, you could say that, I guess, his demeanor or his look, but then again, he's probably not from our generation, so he's probably a newer cop, I'd say. Like, he might have a few years on. How do they train him in the academy now? Don't they tell them, don't do this, don't? That's what I'm saying. What's on the books? So they'll tell you, as someone in the academy, oh, you can't put your hands on someone just because they do X, Y, and Z. They'll tell you this, like because they know, you'll be on the hook, because it'll probably lead to a decline prosecution. That's all they do in New York City. And then what? Then they're going to sue you for false arrest. So not only, like I saw Ron Lason put, is it a CCRB? It's going to be a lawsuit on top of it for false arrest. So that's kind of like, it's an entrapment. And it's, I understand the basis of these auditor guys. I see it's a whole new phenomena, and I see what they do. Some of the stuff they do, they actually catch cops that are really like crazy, like they say and do crazy things. But in other instances, something like that, I don't know if that's what this guy is, an auditor or whatever he wants to call himself, but you want to put a cookie in a cop's face, or you want to even come close to a cop's face, that, I don't know where that's written in the books that you could do, you think is okay, and how it's not written in the book saying you can't do that. I know in Florida, somebody did write that about there's an act on that, a HALO Act, I believe it, and you can't do that. The cop can arrest you, and you will be prosecuted for doing something. In my opinion, it's stupid to run up to someone and start doing something in their face, no matter who it is. But in New York City, how does this look? How would this look if he did arrest him, if he did do something? Because then they like to do things based on the big word we like to use around here, perception. And the perception management would be, oh, the cop was heavy-handed for actually defending himself from this guy who was right next to him and could have leaped to get his gun, but that's not what happened. He just put a cookie in his face, so therefore it's a false arrest and all this other stuff. But that's the spin if you're a leftist or a prosecutor, when they tell you they're going to decline it. That's going to be the spin off it. That's because New York City doesn't have a law on the books saying you can arrest someone for doing that, or at least give this guy a summons for putting a cookie within a few inches of your face. I see a problem with that. I don't know why nothing's ever been written for that, but I expect more things like this to happen, because these auditor guys keep pushing, they keep pushing the envelope, and it's only a matter of time. And I saw a couple of them get arrested, but not for anything like that. But it's only a matter of time before one of these cops will probably snap. But that's when you're going to see the whole, it's a false arrest, all that other nonsense. That's the problem. There should be something on the books. I'm sure New York City Council will get that. We'll get to the bottom of that and put that straight into legislation soon. They'll have a discussion over that, I'm sure.
So before we go further into this, because I want to peel this apart, I see so many different elements and layers to this interaction. For some, it might look at it, well, unfortunately, this is what's happening, right? But I could peel this apart and start really looking at different legislation, how leadership affects it, his presence, the whole ball of wax, the 58 itself. But before we get into it, I want to thank our friends and listeners, of course. Right now, we're 900 plus. We're about an hour and a half into the episode. Like, share, and subscribe. Thanks, Sal, for helping out today. We really appreciate John. John couldn't make it. Sal, thank you so much. That's the beauty. Now we have the finest Unfiltered family, really building this team. so that we can have shows every day. Sometimes we had to go down, unfortunately, but now that we have a full team, really we're building an empire here. So we really appreciate it. Thank you so much. More than 900. Like, share, and subscribe. Now, when we go back into this video, so Jack, do me a favor. Before I give some more synopsis, go back to the video and stop when the cookie is in the face of the cop. And so for my active listeners, my friends, please watch here. And I want to see in your comments what you see. So right here and then, Sal, you brought up a great point. They're not training these cops. For one, you said create distance. Absolutely. I don't care what directive is out there or what directive is lacking from the police department. Create distance. Second, here's something John talks about all the time, and I agree. What happened to the interview stance? Why is this police officer's hands at his belt while they're putting a cookie in his face, right? To me, them putting that cookie in the face is also a test. How close can we get to this cop before he takes action? At this point, I can tell you right now. And if you watch the intro to our podcast, at the end of the intro, you see me smacking somebody's phone away because they put their phone in my face. And you know what? I don't care if there's a civilian complaint because I got a wife and kids who's waiting for me to come home. This police officer has his hands down at his side. His hands should be up in that interview stance, or sometimes I would teach people at the alert. Your hands should be ready, or sometimes I refer to it as indexing, and your hands should be up in a position that doesn't appear overconfident. It doesn't appear that you're antagonizing your adversary, but in a position that your hands are up as you're talking. Why? Because they're ready. You're creating, I would say, what's creating a frame, right? This is your window. And in order to have a window solid and protected, it needs a frame. And you need to frame with your hands. And your hands need to be up at the ready. God forbid these guys to take action. So, Sal, great point. Let's create distance. Let's get your hands up. Let's get an interview stance. Let's block and let's protect that firearm. What are your thoughts on tactics?
The tactics are bad, but you're taught to always blade yourself, be in an interview stance. But at the same time, the guy's just standing. He's just like stationed out security, and this guy's. I don't know if he's expecting that guy to do what just happened. I mean, the guy's put it with the cookie in his hands. Again, I don't know what's said at roll call. How this guy was taught, if he's taught this way in the academy, if this is what they're now telling you. Hey, don't be on the lookout. You're going to be, disciplined or whatever. If you put your hands on someone for this. I know inside someone, you would probably say, I want to grab this guy for just doing that. But, again, there's nothing on the books in New York City that says, you can arrest this person or summons this person for putting that object in your face. Because it says that, they take the other interpretation of what the Supreme Court states where, you could film someone from a distance, from a safe distance. I don't know if that's, in your face is not a safe distance. But again, New York City will decline that prosecution. So you're stuck in a catch-22 unless there's a law enacted, some kind of legislation by city council, which I'm sure they're going to they're going to really go move and put a law in for that right away. So until that happens, you're stuck in that position, because if you do take action, just know that there's nothing on the books, and, city council hates you. And so there's, I'd say, a little more than probably half of the people in New York City who have a penchant against cops. And some of it's rightfully so, because you have corrupt executives running around doing crazy stuff. But the average cop in the street, that's who always gets everything put on him, everything, whether it's discipline, whether it's the hatred from people. Those protests, it's not an executive standing there. Some of them do, but who's really going to take the brunt of it? All those cops standing there trying to tell people, back away, don't do this, they're getting CCOB'd and sued. They're the ones just saying, look, just please don't be here, stand over there, and people get upset. So again, this poor guy who now is going viral for all the wrong reasons because he's just standing there. We could say, yeah, okay, he didn't put his hands up. He's not in that stance, an interview stance. He's not bladed. But at the same time, that guy shouldn't be even near him like that. That's way too close for comfort. In the old days, a lot of people in comments, you're right. They could be doing this. They could be doing that. But some of these guys are living in the 80s and 90s. In the era of 2025, where there's cameras and social media, you can't do that. You know why? Because that'll come back around and bite the cop in the butt, and he'll get CCOB'd and he'll get sued. So again, you're stuck in a catch-22. And I understand you have a body camera, but a lot of times I've seen, even with body camera footage, the cop gets destroyed because this other video shows a different angle, and that's what the media will run with. So again, there is nothing on the books enacted, and it really should be. And maybe someone could bring this up, but I highly doubt city council will say you cannot run up on a cop and do that and stay in their safe space, we'll call it. There is no safe space, apparently.
Well, shout out to VSS Ventores, coffee and donuts, more espressos and bagels, $10. Citizens have the right to film and speak their minds. However, being in the personal space of an officer is fair game, and anyone who engages in this behavior is a blank, blank, blank. You know exactly what he said here. Listen, I agree. I agree that unfortunately and I say this all the time, and I have this ongoing debate with Ron Layson. So Ron Layson, I believe was the executive officer of Candidate Assessment Division from 2016 to 2018. And the police department is ever evolving. It changes vast. Even when we do this podcast, sometimes John and I and Sal and Marlon, we have something planned out, especially on a Sunday for Monday. And within seconds, the news changes, right? And we have to change course and change what we're going to speak about, what we're going to give perspective on. And the same thing is with law enforcement. It's forever evolving and changing. So the hiring process, I believe, is much different now than it was for Ron Layson. I don't have proof to it, but based on my observations, there's a specific type that is being hired, and that's meek, timid, and docile. And this police officer, to me, fits that mold. Now, don't get me wrong. He may have the fire inside him. It just hasn't been let out. With the proper training, the proper mentor, maybe he could be a good police officer. I used to say, give me any 5 guys and I'll give you a hell of a team. Because I believed in my mind I could develop boys and make them men. I could teach them the warrior mindset, and I would make them read The Art of War. And I believe that these things can be instilled. You can change your mind. Yes, there has to be something in you. You have to have heart. You have to have some guts. You have to have some balls behind you. Let's be honest. And unfortunately, I think they're hiring a specific type to not engage the public, to have interactions just as that. And I agree. They're walking you into a CCRB. There's no doubt about it. They're putting you in a position for a civilian complaint and potential civil litigation. But you have a right to protect yourself. You have to put your hands in the right position. You have to put your body in the right position. You have to start giving commands. If you have to get more people there. And that's where the problem is with the police department. No directive, no training. This cop is on his own to fend by himself. He has no idea what to do. What do you got? No information? I see you smiling.
No, Mikey, I'm laughing at what you're saying. It's like it's 100% just this guy. What you're saying is true. I know he looks docile and everything, but I don't know what the answer is, because I know that legally, if he takes action, there's nothing for him to lean back on. They will decline that prosecution. I mean, you can say all the one. He's yelling at him, screaming at him. What is there on the books in New York City or New York State that states he could arrest him? I know Joe Kopp's going to say OGA. That doesn't work. It's 2025. It doesn't work anymore. That's the 1980s. I know he says I'm J.D. Davis and not Aaron Judge. Well, Aaron Judge stunk in the World Series, by the way, and he choked up for a guy that's worth $40-50 million a year. Sorry, I don't. I'm not entertaining enough for Joe Kopp crowd. That's the same crowd that would probably get up when we're all sitting down at having a meal inside the station house, and they know it all. Some incident happens, and they'll handle it their way. They know it all. They know everything. They don't talk. Joe Kopp is to the rescue. Let that guy dictate everything. But, again, there's nothing on the books. How do you handle that legally? That's going to be the issue. And, as far as the constituents in New York City, do you want to see a cop protected? Yes or no? Because there's a lot of vitriol, and the vitriol come from those rioters. We're not going to call them protesters. They're rioters. They come in and they want to create chaos. And that's the kind of person that is taking the video like that, in my opinion, throwing a cookie. That's a guy that wants to fight because he's looking for that what do we call that? The lottery they're looking for in the street when they pick on the cops. That's what they're doing. And I feel sorry for that guy. He shouldn't have to be put in that situation, but it's unfortunate. That's the way the world has become. And what this social media, yet again, I'm going to reiterate that because he's trying to go for that viral social media moment. Oh, look, I'm throwing a cookie in a cop's face because he wants to be famous on social media. So again, it works both ways. He's trying to be famous, and it could be used against the cop for taking action in an instance where he wasn't even supposed to be taking action. I saw another video of a cop with a pizza box in his hands, and he takes out his taser because this woman is screaming at him. And that could be a whole nother discussion. So again, you just got to be cognizant of people trying to become social media stars and entrap you in some kind of moment. And it's not 1985 anymore. Sorry, OGA, it's not going to work. Sorry. You might think it's 1985. It's 2025. OGA will get you more than likely in trouble. And in fact, this week, you'll be reading about a lawsuit. I'll give you another tidbit. There's a lawsuit upcoming where Eric Adams himself involved and the New York City Police Department. They were pounding on someone who happens to be the son of a former police officer, and Eric Adams is directly involved in the middle of this. And again, it's captured on what? Video. And there's body camera, and they're withholding it and all this other stuff. So the viral moments, the social media, the pounding people, OGA, that's 1980s Joe Cop talk. It doesn't work anymore. And if you get caught, what's going to happen is you're going to be in front of that paper. And then the Joe Cop who thinks he's smarter than everyone else, you're going to be behind the 8 ball because the truth is you're one where there's 99% of other people think you're wrong. Your 1980s style doesn't work anymore. So sorry, I'm not John McCarry for Joe Cop or whatever. You think everyone, I guess I'm no good. But the reality is I speak for the majority of people that vote, that actually pay your taxes, stuff like that. And what I'm saying is what they're saying. And that's what matters because they'll be the 12 people in the jury judging you, not Joe Cop. He'll be the first one running. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, Contra Free. Oh, that kind of stuff. I don't know that. I don't know that guy. Yeah, I was a good cop my whole career. So I don't want to hear that stuff. I mean, some of this guy's stuff is very low information, if I can say so.
Low information is right, Sal. You're absolutely right. You bring up some great points. But there is, before I go into a Supreme Court case, got some great comments here. Mikey G says this has to stop, right? Question is how? How do we make this stop? Because this is not just one incident. So we can't say it's just this cop in particular. This is a new phenomenon.
Yeah, it's a social media thing. They want to go viral. This is how you go viral, something like this. Suppose he maces you. You're going to go viral.
That's absolutely right? It's about attention. How do they get attention? But in order to get that attention, it's my opinion, they target a specific type of police officer. There still are police officers in the NYPD, even rookies, and they're outliers that have those masculine traits that are fit. But I don't see those police officers that are the ones being approached because in the force continuum, your presence is your first line of defense. Your presence. Now, that doesn't mean you can fight your way out of a paper bag. I knew plenty of guys, 6'4", built great. They looked fantastic in uniform, and they couldn't fight their way out of a paper bag because they were never pressure tested. But they had the appearance of it. And when it comes to the appearance of presence, sometimes in policing, that's more important than actually knowing how to handle yourself. That may deter enough encounters just by that appearance. So Ron Layson says, I do disagree. Ron, I love you. I love that we always go back and forth. He says they are hiring those who apply, I believe, is more of the entitled generation versus earlier generations, coupled by training, lack of support by legislator upper echelon. So I will say this. I agree. Lack of training, absolutely. The training is inadequate. It's not up to par. The upper echelon is zero support. The oversight of the CCRB is overzealous. The ability in the most litigious nation, especially New York City, to sue is just too easy. But coupled with the fact, I do believe there is a specific type that is being targeted. I believe if I applied today, or Sal, or John, or Marlon, to be a police officer, and some of our friends, including you, Ron, including Rob Lukash, we would not get hired today. One, we are white alpha masculine males. we would not get the jobs. And I'm pretty confident. Is that conjecture? Of course it is. That's my opinion. But I believe we wouldn't get the job today. I do believe they hire a specific type. They bring them in with all these factors and the lack of training. This is your byproduct. So, Jack, do me a favor, bring up that picture again. I want to look at that picture of the cop and tell you even more. Now, when we go back to that picture, when we talk about this police officer with the cookie in his face, we're also talking about legislation. So, Ron, you bring up a great point. Now, technically, a stop report, which is something that's conducted by the police department, would be documented when you stop someone or engage someone based on reasonable suspicion, when you detain them. And you know what's interesting about this? It's almost as if these orders are now detaining the cop. So my question is, Jumaane Williams, who's the public advocate, who advocated for police officers to document all levels of intrusion under the case of People versus the Board, meaning if you have an interaction with someone and it's not on a stop, it's not where someone's detained, just an interaction, that would be documented. So here's my question for the police department and Jumaane Williams. Would this interaction be documented? Because if that's the case, I believe this should be documented, and it should be documented that they're holding the cop hostage and they put these adversaries, these subjects, put this cop in a vulnerable position. And these encounters should be utilized and analyzed by the police department to make better and effective training to stop this phenomenon. Is it part of social media? Yes. But these social media influencers, that people that take the opportunity, they find the right cops to do it to. And I'm not trying to pick on this cop, but he's the right one. He has the appearance that he's not going to be able to chase you. He's young looking, which means he doesn't have much experience with the police department. His hands are at his side. He looks timid. He looks unsure. And yes, he's definitely unsure because there's no support. There's no directive. We need a directive from Jessica Tisch. I know you're watching this. Juju will tell you. We need a directive today. How do these police officers take action? And if this police officer does take action and puts his hands out to create distance and shall his hand hit those subjects on the chest to create distance, will you support him from a CCRB? Will you protect him from civil litigation? Where are the unions? Pat Hendry, stop just waiting in the courtroom. You should be sounding the horn right now, and you should be talking about incidents like this to protect your cops. And we don't hear a word from three-haired Hendry. We don't hear nothing. Where is reckless cowboy John Shell to protect this cop? Because guess what? I guarantee you if that cop was wearing khaki pants, and if that khaki pants cop took action, put him on the floor, and stomped him on his head, that cop would be full duty and probably get an award.
You are right, because I don't know where are the unions in this? Where is anyone in power on this? Because again, I know what they're going off of. They go on that Supreme Court law, the Supreme Court ruling that you stated. But again, it gives you a generalization. Yes, you could stand 20 feet away and scream and yell and do all that stuff and say, oh, 50A, blah, blah, blah. But you can't go in an officer's face. But again, there's no law saying that you can, like in Florida. So what happens is in New York City, you're going to see more incidents. There's going to be more instances of this. There's going to be incidents, and you just hope some cop doesn't fly off the handle, because then the rubber's going to meet the road. They're going to say, oh, he made an arrest. It's declined prosecution. And then you're going to see the fallout from an incident like that. That's what I think a lot of cops are afraid of doing something. They're taking action because of what I'm saying, because there is nothing on the books for this. So what you're basically saying, the alternative is you could do whatever you want to our law enforcement, get in their face and do all this stuff because there's nothing to protect them, and it only favors basically the antagonizer, the criminal, because that's almost like criminal behavior. I don't understand why you can't do that from a distance. You have to do it up front. You have to do it in his face. You see? So you're antagonizing the situation, because there's nothing that says they can't do that from the corner or 20 feet away. Nobody says he can't do that. They do it in every riot and protest they do. But this individual and his buddy decided to do it right up in his face, and because they know they could get away with it, because that's the other aspect of it, is they know they could get away with it. Again, they're trying to go viral. So how much does social media play in this? Looms very large, both ways. He knows he could go viral doing something stupid and crazy like that. And on the other side, they know They can't arrest them because OGA from the 1980s does not work when there's cameras everywhere, and they don't care about your body camera. They only care about that camera, that guy. Because in every instance you see where someone gets in trouble, it's usually the other video that they show. They never show the body camera footage. It was only used. I saw it be used in a few cases, but this one would go viral because somebody taped him, not because his body camera's on and you're seeing how far away exactly he is. Because it might be a deception of how close he is, but he's right there. I'm telling you, he's right in his face. It's as close as it could be. But on a body camera, you'd really see it. But they'll never show you that anyway, because that would support the officer's case. So they have to support the antagonizer. That's how New York City is. And it is an undertone that they don't like the rank and file. They don't mind John Shell, but they don't like the rank and file. And that's the problem. That's who we're basically trying to defend here on this show. And it's basically fact-based analysis. Despite the Joe Cops in the crowd who think they know it all, that's what we're trying to do. You want to encapsulate the public's opinion. That's what matters. If they don't like you, nothing's going to change. If they go to trial, there's 12 of them that will convict you. It's not the Joe Cop. That's not going to help. That's not going to move the needle. And the union should also be listening because, it's the public that matters. Because all of this stuff, and the rubber meets the road when the public decides to put their foot down and say, we've had enough. And this is the way we want things done. So far, they haven't. New York City is just business as usual. But there might come a day when that changes.
Well, we talk about the public, right? But right now, in order to protect the cops, we need the support of the upper echelon. The upper echelon has to put their foot down. And I'm serious about that. If this was a cop in khaki pants, and we could only listen, what's the best prediction of the future is a reflection of the past. And when Lieutenant Nick Stephanopoulos stomped on an adversary's head, Nick Stephanopoulos is currently full duty working in the police department. So if this police officer had taken action and stomped on the head, obviously I'm being rhetorical here, but if this police officer had stomped on the head of these adversaries, he would be able to be out operating on full duty. Now, there is a Supreme Court case we can correlate to this, and that's Graham versus Connor. And we talk about Graham versus Connor, we're talking about how a police officer feels in real time. Would it be out of the norm to say that that police officer is intimidated? Because at that point, we can't see what's behind the camera. We don't know how many subjects and how many adversaries are confronting this police officer. We do know this police officer is solo. We do know this police officer is confronted. And what does this police officer concerns have? He's working the 17th precinct, high traffic area. There could be people above him. There could be people alongside him. I'm sure there's some people going to say, it's a 17th precinct. I don't care where you work. It's how you operate. It's how you handle yourself. Anyone can be a threat at any time. It's how you handle yourself. Stephen S. says it. This thing keeps the officer and citizens safe and de-escalates the situation. Absolutely. That police officer should have had his hands up in taking action. There's an art to moving people without touching them. And the NYPD used to do it the best. The NYPD, and Sal, think about your career. John and I talk about this all the time. There's no one better at moving people than the NYPD. We have an art to move people without touching them. The way we move, the way we talk to them, that interview stance, as minuscule in the minutia to it, it's actually very important. Busta Malaka talks about the Weaver stance. I like the Weaver stance, but that's a shooting stance. I think that's more applicable when you actually have the firearm in your hand. But when you're just engaging someone in a conversation, I do believe the interview stance, I like to refer to the hands as indexing. And when I talk about indexing, it's very important. So if my active cops, you're out there, you listen to this. When I say indexing, your hands should always be higher than the hands of your adversary or subject. I have a problem with that police officer having his hands on his waist. Reason being, if someone takes action within a moment's notice, your hands are higher than theirs. You're in a better position to take action, and the results and the chances of you getting hurt are less likely than if your hands are lower than your adversary. These are tactics and training tips that should be taught to our police officers, and they're not. And let's make no mistake about it. It's not that the police department doesn't have the resources. They're not teaching. I just went down. I think I just froze for a second.
Yeah.
But anyway, at the academy, They have plenty of talented personnel working at the police academy that have the tools and the capability to teach these police officers. But the NYPD is not supporting them. They're too concerned with getting booty at 1PP. They're too concerned with utilizing the job to have a best dressed beauty pageant. They're too concerned with taking their kids to school. They're too concerned with rocking around with their families in these cars, not paying tolls, than actually teaching these police officers, protecting them, and serving them, and make sure the police officer can do their job. Zero directive. Has anyone told this police officer, if you have First Amendment orders in your face, here's what to do? I highly doubt it. Sal, has anyone ever told you what to do?
With that, no. What you basically would do is you took directives from a senior officer. The senior officers in my day, which would have been, I got an 08, so 08, 2010, those are guys that were in the 90s, and they're probably hitting their 20th year then. They were very excellent at stuff like this. So they taught us how to, you could basically, what do you call that? Like verbal judo. But here's the other part. The public and those antagonizers, they would listen to you more back in that day than after years of demonizing police and saying that they're their enemy and all this other crazy stuff. So there was no upside to you being, a cop said we can't stand here, but we'll stand over there. All right, so we'll stand over there. Now it's, what are you talking about? Why? And they're very antagonistic because they know that moment could go viral, and then they become viral. So that is what's in the back of everyone's head. That wasn't there all those years ago when we started. And social media wasn't as big as it is today. And the threat of the moment, of the viral video, whatever, that's always got to loom over someone's head, because it's so many different ways they can look at it, and then they're going to come down on you. And they're not going to care what Joe Cop says. It's whatever the public says. That's what determines whether you get indicted, whether you lose your job, whether you get fined, that's what it is. Public perception, as we like to say, perception management by the Eric Adams administration. That's what rules the roast. You know how you get Eric Adams' attention? You start pointing things out, like his favorite nightclub, like the activities they like to do. They can't stand that. But if you're going to sit there and jab with him about things he likes, they love it. They'll just go on and on and on to live another day. But when you point out things, he hates it because he's all about perception management. And here, what is the perception of that video? You might laugh, the cop didn't do his job, whatever, but as long as he didn't throw the guy on the ground and do what some of these Joe Cop guys want to do, that'll get you in trouble today. Whether you think it's right or wrong, that moment will go viral and they'll say the cop was wrong. We've seen this in other instances where, the cop was wrong. Because, again, there's nothing on the books for that. And that's what really needs to happen, is it needs to be a law on the books so that you know how to handle this. Because just throwing a guy on the ground because you don't like that he got in your face, which I understand should be a law, but still, things done on feelings never work out. You have to have some kind of something to lean back on, per se, and that would be a law that states you can't get in a cop's face and put a cookie in his face or say whatever you want to do. Oh, look at you, whatever. And somebody, I think, in the comments said that that guy who did that is actually a First Amendment auditor. I don't know if that's true, but the guy that took the video and did that, that guy's a disgrace. If he did that, that's disgraceful. That just shows, I wonder, on his page how many other times he's done this to other cops. Because then that guy personally is a problem if he's going around doing that.
Well, here's the problem, right? We have to look at the big picture. The big picture is this. If we have police officers that are timid and docile and they're meek and they're in these vulnerable positions and they're allowing these First Amendment orders, if they are First Amendment orders, or maybe just a couple of adversaries that want to get social media hype, they want to get likes and get some clout. The point is, it doesn't matter. But if they are doing this and this cop is timid by that, that's why I talk about the 50A and why it's substantial and how the 50A is good for certain things, transparency, but they should not remain there forever. But it's also a major problem when that 50A could be used as leverage. Think about a cop like that. What if they say, hey, you got all your information here. I know all your CCRBs. And a cop happens to be suspended for a DWI himself. It's, we got all this information on you. You know what? And then because of that DWI, They look up the information. They find out where the cop lives. And now they tell the cop, you know what? You work nights? When you work nights, I'm going to stop by your house and check on your wife. And I'm going to check on your kids. And now that cop is terrified. And now they say, you know what? It starts out small. Hey, do us a favor. Go to that store. Get us a couple bags of weed. And then it starts to bump up. Could this happen? Absolutely. These cops could be held hostage because there's 50A, and because we're hiring timid personnel, and because we're not training them, and because we're not getting behind them and giving them support. That's a major problem. These cops need support. These cops need training. We need the right people. We need people with the hearts. Rob Lukash puts, times have changed. Cops would bang their nightstick and the crowd would disperse. It's a lack of leadership and direction on what action to take. Exactly. Zero leadership, no direction. The cops are lost. And that's why that case right there is quintessential. You look at the cop's face, he doesn't know what to do. He's vulnerable. His hands are at his side. How easy would it be for them to tackle him, take his gun and shoot him, or you know what, or just completely humiliate him and demoralize him? And it comes down to, I don't care about the legislation. I don't care about any of those external pressures. What I care about is the internal pressures and the leadership. Get him the proper training. You have talented personnel. Get these cops a training. Protect them from themselves. But there's no directive. This cop doesn't know how to handle it. And I used to tell my cops this, and it's a metaphor for life. And I hope my friends and listeners, think about this. I used to say this: when you're in a position, if you're back on your heels, you're wrong. Because when you're back on your heels, guess what? That's when you fall down. But that's the same thing in life. When you're back on your heels, you can fall down in life. When you're in a position and you're faced with an adversary, you should be on your toes. You should be the one pressing forward. If you allow these adversaries and these subjects, these First Amendment auditors, to put you on your heels, you've already lost. Because if they take action, especially with his weight and his body type, he's going down. So that's a major problem. Be on your toes in life and don't be on your heels. So listen, I think we hit this home. I think that, unfortunately, we see this way too often. It needs to stop. But the only way it's going to stop, just like Rob Lukash said, with the right leadership. We need direction. We need to get people behind them. Stephen S. says, timing and position is everything. You're absolutely right. Timing, positioning, and distance. These are key factors. So, Sal, is there anything you want to discuss about? We're getting close to 2 hours. I love our friends and listeners here. Thank you so much for stepping in. If there's anything you want to mention, let's bring it forward.
Well, the last thing I want to say is I think Stephen S. actually had a good idea. He said that he could have actually put his hand up. Now, if the guy gets involved with touching his hand or whatever, that would then say you touched the cop. But he's right. You could have just said, hey, can you do me a favor? He didn't do that either. So he didn't put his hand down and go, can you do me a favor? You got to stay away, because that's at least it's at least 1 or 2 feet away from you. So if he's bumping into your hand, then he's way too close to you. He's right. He could have done something like that. Again, we're Monday morning quarterbacking this. We're not that officer. Obviously, the officer wasn't bladed, didn't have an interview stance, but we don't know how he's trained or what he's told at roll call either. So I'm not going to jump on a guy other than to say that auditor guy, whoever that guy is, that needs to have like a law put on it where you can film from a distance. You can't be putting your hand in an officer's face or anyone's face. That's regular person. You can't do that either. What I did, so for a next subject or anything coming up on my show coming up at 12 o'clock, I'm going to have Serena Townsend on, and we break down Eric Adams' indictment because there's so much chatter. Is Trump going to pardon him? Is the Justice Department dropping the case? Yet the case continues to move forward. We're going to break that down, and Serena Townsend is a lawyer, so we're going to get a lawyer's legal opinion on it, not just me, because some of you might say we all have axes to grind, even though nothing we say is a lie, but we have axes to grind. You have Joe Kopp in the crowd. So we're gonna break that down, and I also break down the legal aspects of the case we were just discussing involving the $700 award for someone that comes to a party for best dressed female, which I still think is an abomination. But somehow legal says they don't know about it, and the EEO department approved it. They're approving sexual harassment, apparently. So that's all coming up at 12 o'clock. So I don't know if you have anything to say. Sorry, John McCarty couldn't make it today. He'll be back tomorrow for all the Joe Cops in the crowd. You could enjoy yourself tomorrow. Aaron Judge, who can't hit in the World Series, you can enjoy yourselves with that. So other than that, I'm just I'm living life in sunny Florida. Today's going to be it's like 90 degrees today. Just want to throw that in. Life is good down here. We actually arrest people that put their, that the cookie in some of a cop's face. That's not allowed down here.
Usually I play the boxes on Super Bowl, so I didn't get a chance to play this year because I've been traveling. So any of our friends and listeners, if you made out in the Super Bowl boxes, I hope you did. I hope you enjoyed yourselves. I just want to circle back. I think it's important we highlight this. So when we go back to the article about the NYPD best dressed, for active cops out there, think about this, because this was the smartest quote by John Scola. And I'll tell you right now, I'm not a fan of John Scola, but this is where they're going to win the lawsuit. And he says this. This is in the article about the best dressed, the NYPD beauty pageant. He says, women in the NYPD should be judged solely on their job performance, not on their willingness to participate in a culture that pressures them to dress provocatively at department events. That's where they're going to the lawsuit. Whether they chose to engage it or not, whether it's supposed to be lighthearted and fun, that's where they're going to win. That's why I say the upper echelon has to be more intelligent, but we have an ineffective, inept leadership management of the NYPD that at this point, either one, they're just completely stupid and moronic, or two, they think that they have so much power that nothing could ever happen to them and it won't come back on them. And maybe they're right, because at this point, it just appears to be no change. It seems Jeffrey Madry is getting a full pension. It seems he's retiring into full bliss, that nothing's happening to him. John Schell, completely unprofessional, reckless. He was promoted to chief of the department. I mean, this is the message. Why would they think any different? Kaz Daughtry is operating like, you know what? These cars are his, from what I hear, the rumors. These cars are his. He can use it to do his dry cleaning, take his kids wherever he wants to go. So the bottom line is, it doesn't matter in the face of appearance of impropriety. They just don't care. It's their police department. The amount of power that they have, nothing will get in their way. And if that means utilizing the women of the police department to dress scandalous for their enjoyment, they do it. And that's what the NYPD has become, this giant frat house led by men that couldn't get women unless they got promoted. It's really crazy. So whether this woman had a prior lawsuit, I don't know. Maybe she's the type of person that goes out to get lawsuits. Who knows? But they gave it to her. The bottom line is they gave it away. So look, we're 2 hours into this. I got to thank Sal Greco for stepping in today. We covered a lot of topics. Content is not running away. We've got a lot of content here. We talked about a lieutenant who's got a Category 2 car, and it's your perception that's important. Think about it. Do you think it's corruption? Do you think it's misconduct? Or you think it's business as usual? I think we provided a lot of good information on a lot of perspective along with the NYPD Administrative Guide Procedure. We spoke about the NYPD beauty pageant, and I think that's as clear as day. Just completely stupid, moronic, and they basically just paid this girl millions because she will make money on it. And we spoke about this cop here. If that doesn't perturb you, that scene with that cop, then that blood in your boil, that blood in your veins is not cop blood. That should bother you. And every citizen, you should watch that. And that should be problematic, because if these First Amendment orders can get into the personal space of a cop and intimidate and make a cop vulnerable, what could they do to you? And we know what they could do to you, because if you take action, you'll be Daniel Penny. And if you'll take action as this cop, if he should have, and he did, if he would have got a civilian complaint substantiated. He would have gotten civil litigation. But you know what? At the end of the day, who cares? Go home with 10 fingers and go home with 10 toes. You go home to your family because there's someone that cares about you. Because guess what? If this job doesn't work out, there's a whole world out there to make money. There's a whole world, but you don't deserve. And to that cop out, right? To this cop out there, if you get to see this, this is not to make fun of you. I hope this makes you better. Get on your toes. Don't be back on your heels. Sal Greco, any last words before I close this out? I want to say thank you as always. Any last words, any advice, please give it.
Yeah, I mean, for the cop that was involved in it, none of this is meant in a negative way towards you. If you are watching, I am actually, I believe you. I don't know what you could have done because, again, none of these laws favor you. So we're trying to help you because that was egregious. And if there's a First Amendment auditor, like the comments are saying that guy is, there should be maybe something put on. You want to be an auditor, but you can't get in a cop's face. I'm sorry. There should be a law on that, like they have it in Florida. They should have one in New York City. Again, at 12:05, we're going to have Serena Townsend on. We're going to talk about Eric Adams' indictment, break down everything with that. And, thanks for having me on here. For all the fans of the show and the haters or the Joe Cops of the world, you don't perturb me. I just keep moving forward. I've dealt with all kinds of people, whether it be in my career, whether it was now as a civilian. It doesn't bother me. I'm still trying to help everyone, even the Joe Cops in the world who think they know it all. Because, you get that also in the civilian world, the know it all. That'll be like the fancy looking guy who goes on TV. I know Trump will be indicted today. All those guys. How did that work out for you? So, again, I always have a blast here. I find it, trying to be entertaining, but also factual as well. This is a fact-based analysis show, much like the Sal Greco show, which, again, at 12:05, we'll be on with Serena Townsend, breaking down Eric Adams' indictment. Tomorrow, John Macario will return, so everyone should be happy. I'm sure he'll be fired up about all of this, and there'll probably be more coming down. Like I said, there should be something coming up in the news about Eric Adams and the NYPD and a brutal assault on someone who was arrested for nonsense. But you'll be seeing that in the news, probably Daily News or ABC coming up. So look out for that one. And what can I say, Eric? It's a front row seat to the greatest show on earth, the Eric Adams administration. What else?
That's right. That's right, Sal. Thank you so much for stepping in today. Finest Unfiltered family, you did an awesome job. I appreciate it. Great comments by our friends and listeners. We had about 1,000 people on the show today. Our friends and listeners, you're so important for us building this network together, giving us the information, helping us out so that we can grow together. We appreciate it. Outstanding show. We covered a lot of content. Check out Sal, upcoming 12:05 today. He'll be on. And, of course, we got a packed meet for you on Wednesday. Check out my buddy, Detective Smith. He's going to give us his story, his experience. We'll memorialize his career. John will be back tomorrow, 8 to 5 live Eastern time. And, of course, I'll be here Pacific time, bright and early. Take care, everybody. Thank you.
There's a handful of retired officers that don't live in the state that have a lot to say about the dream team, as I like to call it. All of a sudden, they retire and have a master plan on how to fight crime. But nothing to contribute when they were here. They want to come back and be part of the dream team. What can I say?
Law enforcement professionals dedicate their lives to serving and protecting our community. But who's protecting their financial futures? That's where Laidlaw Blue comes in. Our wealth management platform is specifically designed for the law enforcement community. Laidlaw Blue is a division within Laidlaw Wealth Management, run by retired New York City detective John McDermott. His status as a retired detective uniquely positions him to establish a deep connection between Laidlaw Blue and the law enforcement community. Our platform is easy to use and provides a range of financial services, including investment management, retirement planning, and insurance solutions. With Laidlaw Blue, you can secure your financial future and provide for your loved ones. Our team of experienced financial advisors understands the unique challenges and opportunities that law enforcement professionals face. We're here to help you navigate the complexities of financial planning and achieve your goals. Laidlaw Blue. Secure your financial future today. Book a meeting using the QR code displayed or call us directly on 888 901 Blue. That's 888 901 Blue.